Happy Sunday. You're listening to Rainbow Radio. In my humble opinions, coming up next, I'm your host, Nice Guy Eddie. I'd like to welcome you all to what is the last, or likely to be the last Sunday show that we're doing. The Sunday segment's going to be moving to Saturday, 8 p.m., wherein I will typically be interviewing one of the artists, DJs, or remixers working with Barbara in Sobel Promotions on Sobel Island, as we call it. So I look forward to that. I look forward to some of the great conversations. This would be reminiscent of the shows that I've done with Julian Marsh and Issa, Barbara herself. Hopefully we'll get her coaxed back onto the air a couple of times. I know everybody likes hearing from her. And also last week's with Aaron Paul. Coming up, we have Amrik Shana, Sheena Rose, and others. So look forward to that. Again, that'll be the Saturday show, 8 o'clock time slot. Tuesday will stay at its regular time at 10 o'clock. And I will continue to do interviews and commentary on that as well. One thing I want to mention about the rerun on Tuesday, and I'm kind of, in a way, I'm kind of glad because nobody was, that was really run really early on, and the audience that night was the lowest of any show I've done, and I was happy to be able to rerun it because I think Megan Gedris is a phenomenal person, really talented, really funny, great artist, great writer. Very funny comedian and burlesque dancer, for that matter. So I was happy to be able to rerun that. But I wanted to mention kind of why that happened. And this goes back to a couple weeks ago when I had the show with Devin Green, Mrs. Betty Bowers, America's Best Christian. And I mentioned during that show that the sound was a little bit uneven because of some technical difficulties. Well, those technical difficulties have basically forced me to have my primary system in the shop for repair. My secondary system is questionable at best, and my tertiary system, I actually have a third backup. That one's toast, basically because of a lost power cord that we can't seem to find. So life happens sometimes, but we adapt, we move on. So here we go, we're moving on. Last Sunday I had the pleasure of covering the Ferndale Trans Pride picnic. Transgender Michigan was the sponsoring organization. I met a lot of great people. Got to talk to a lot of people representing some fantastic organizations, several churches, and a holistic healer for one. And those are all things that I would not normally be endorsing. But again, great people, and I want to. What they said made a lot of sense, and I've got no problem letting everybody hear it and boosting a lot of signal boosting a lot of the work that a lot of these organizations are doing, not just those three, but really everybody. And like I said, I met some really great people doing some good work. So without further ado, we'll get started with some of the highlights from that day. And by the way, there's a couple of rather funny anecdotes that I will intersperse there because there were a couple really awkward moments during the day when I did some really stupid stuff. None of it related to it being a trans pride event or even an LGBT event. Just me being really smooth. No, not really at all. Anyway, here we go. Ferndale Trans Pride picnic from last Sunday. Okay, so we've got I'm sorry, what is your name?
Erica Morris.
Nice to meet you. Nice guy, Eddie.
Jennifer Judd.
Jennifer Judd.
Michelle Fox Phillips.
Nice to meet you. And you said President Stonewall and
Director of Field Operations for Equality Michigan.
And
Executive Director, Co-founder of Gender Identity Network.
Oh, okay. So why don't you each tell me a little bit about your organizations? Who wants to go first?
Okay. We are a service-based organization, advocacy. We do advocacy work. We do the Transgender Day of Empowerment every spring, where we have seminars and workshops, and then we have vendor tables there.
Okay.
We do potluck dinners for anybody that's TLGB that have nowhere to go on Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter.
Oh, wow.
Over at Affirmations.
Where's that located?
Affirmations. Yes, I'm really.
She's like pointing across the street. I'm not from Ferndale, so she's literally pointing, and I'm like, apparently I'm not from around here.
It's on 9 Mile, just west of Woodward.
Okay.
Right next to Huntington Bank is the Affirmations Community Center, so we have our dinners there. We have a program called Transcend, which helps people with hormones. We have a pharmacist who's the vice president of our organization.
Okay. So like someone might not have coverage or might not otherwise have access?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a pharmacist that will help with hormones.
Okay.
And he has tentacles out to doctors and stuff.
Cool.
Okay.
And is there a website?
Yeah, gnausa.org.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay.
And
I'll just hold it up here.
I'll get you my card.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Stick around.
I will.
I'm Jennifer Judd. I'm the Director of Field Operations for Equality Michigan. And Equality Michigan is the statewide LGBTQ advocacy and policy organization. So we work one of the biggest things that we're working on right now is amending ELCRO, which is the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. We want to modernize that to include sexual orientation and gender identity.
Okay.
So we are working to, build capacity and to get people involved with their legislators, because right now, even though we passed marriage,
Right.
we can still get fired.
There's a long
the
way
next
to go.
day, right?
Yep.
And so that's what I do.
Okay. I was actually talking to Jim Toy last week.
Okay.
So you're trying to get these laws caught up to what they have in East Lansing and Ann Arbor, I guess.
Well, yeah, there's 40 actually local ordinances across
Oh,
the
okay.
state.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot
Didn't realize
of
there were that many.
Yeah,
Okay. So
but,
it's come some way. There's been some progress.
Right. So there are 40 local ordinances, and we've had a hand in all of those, and most of those. We have a lobbyist who works up in Lansing who literally just talks to legislators all day and lobbies for LGBTQ people.
I'll pass him my card if he ever wants to.
All right, yeah. And so I work to kind of support that work.
Okay, great. And then now I assume Stonewall, we all recognize the name, but how about the local organization then?
I'm Eric Moyes. I'm president of the Stonewall Bar Association, so it's basically, the Lawyers Bar Association of Michigan,
okay.
so for LGBT, but also allies.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working I'm actually partnering with Michelle from GINA and Equality Michigan and Affirmations for the Career Legal Project. That's what we're standing here with the surveys.
Okay.
To improve access to legal services for the LGBT community, and also get lawyers trained on these issues, because sometimes they're not so knowledgeable on some of that, and also get some clinics going for the community.
Okay.
So come get some legal advice and get some help.
All right.
So we're definitely moving towards that.
Now you mentioned the marriage, and we're not over yet. So what if there was a number one issue, number one focus for where the fight goes next? Where would it be?
Absolutely to ELCRO, to change it to amending the Civil Rights Act of
Okay.
Michigan.
I would agree with that.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really quick, one thing I want to mention about that is the community center affirmations. Almost everybody I talked to mentioned it, and while this was not my first time to one of these events, it was my first time in this particular area of Ferndale, even though it's not that far from me, and my kid actually goes to school there. So it was a little bit funny that everybody seemed to know about this place except me. So obviously I've got some self-educating still left to do. But when I asked her where that was and she literally just pointed across the street, I felt a little bit embarrassed. In this next segment, I actually met one of the chief people over at Michelle Fox Phillips' organization, and it started out she telling me a lot of the same stuff, but some interesting projects coming up that she was kind of teasing that sounded interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and play that out. Tell me a little bit about your organization and what you guys are all about. But
I just did that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You want to talk?
So.
Well, you're doing some of that stuff, so I
want to tell them.
Anything to add or anything?
Well, I don't know whether
I told
she
them
said
about our potluck dinners and
the events, the holiday events and stuff.
That's all the kind of stuff. I would say the thing that's kind of cool is we're kind of, you could say it's like the standard service-based organization, but what's really kind of unique is we're kind of we're right at the beginning stages of launching a whole new line of programming that's going to start this fall. That's going to be a unique set of offerings for the transgender and basically the gender variant community. Okay. That's kind of unlike anything anybody's seen. So I invite people to basically come by, take a look at our Facebook page, because we're going to be launching an events section. You'll be able to find out information about us, I would think, through Affirmations. Mm-hmm. Also online at gnausa.org as well. Okay. And you know, we're not one of those stuffy shirt organizations where it's like, ooh, that's kind of cool, look at that. No. Honestly, friend all of us, reach out, send us a chat, drop us a text, give us a call.
Yes,
we're here for the long haul, and we're here to help.
All right.
With more than anything, we're here to help people.
Awesome. Well, thanks. It was nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Next person I talked to was very interesting. They were a Rocky Horror Picture Show aficionado, also someone who organizes showings and brings the props, breaks in the Rocky Horror Picture Show virgins, and also was really interested in talking about what they do and about the movie, because it's not always viewed favorably these days. But they, of course, they were just slightly older than me and saw it coming up, when it was in the theater, and saw it change through each generation, and how each generation kind of added something to it and kind of made it their own. And it was, I'm not saying that I have an opinion about it, the social value of it one way or the other, but it was interesting to see it defended, where I think the trend these days, and again, arguably rightly so, is to be more critical or more negative of it. But it was an interesting conversation. So listen.
You were telling me about the Rocky Horror Picture Show presentations that you do.
That's right.
And I was asking you something about the history and if there's either a reclaiming of that, or because there's some opinion out there that that's transphobic or not good representation. What's your take on all that?
Well, they haven't seen the film apparently.
Okay.
Or not aware of the culture that surrounds the film.
Okay, and you mentioned you were a first-generation fan, so you go way back with this. Okay. So tell us a little bit about that.
My story is I was the president of the MSU Star Trek Club.
Okay.
As a fan of Star Trek.
So you're a huge nerd.
A huge nerd.
No, that's all right.
Yes, I
Me too.
admit it. And suddenly my members were going to see this science fiction film called Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I had to go check it out.
Right.
And you got to understand how the whole culture developed.
Right.
Back then, the film was a shock.
Right. Right.
The dress today, if we dressed like that, who cares? You see people on the street dressed like that.
Sure.
Back then, you didn't.
No.
Seen any of that. Even the transvestites was a shock.
Right.
Myself.
It's like a mainstreaming of drag, basically.
Yeah.
But that wasn't even, yeah.
In the 70s, you're still escaping from the conformists of the 50s and the 60s.
Right, exactly.
Now.
And soon to run right back into in the 80s.
Yeah. So, a lot of people didn't understand, couldn't figure out the film.
Right, okay.
One, the script is so, shall we say, schlocky.
Okay.
Amateurish.
I was going to say absurd, but yeah.
Absurd.
Okay. Yeah.
That, they had to make jokes on the damn thing.
Sure.
They're so nervous.
Right.
Because of the content of what the film is talking about.
Right.
They start making jokes, the audience.
Okay, gotcha, yeah, okay.
So, people are throwing jokes at the screen just to relieve the tension of watching this shocking film.
Okay.
That's how audience...
That's how it started.
That's how it started, in my opinion.
Okay.
Then, because it's a science fiction, and there weren't very many science fiction films back then.
Right.
I understand that. Star Wars came later.
Yeah.
People were wearing costumes. Okay, so now they're wearing costumes to the show. Back then, the contest amongst attendees was how many times you've seen the film. I think I got up to 40 or 50 and stopped counting.
Oh, God. All right, well, yeah, I've seen Star Wars at least 200 times myself, so I'm no one to judge there. I don't judge, yeah, so for sure.
You got people in costume, people throwing jokes at the screen, props were just another way to relieve the tension, and because it was a stupid film as far as they were concerned. It's like, what?
But you're saying that behind that there was a statement being made, though, that this was sort of putting it out there, or was it meant to be absurd?
Well, if you
or a little of both.
Yeah, talk to Richard O'Brien. You'll see a lot of his comments on the web.
Okay.
But he was. The whole movie is a satire of B movies, science fiction B movies.
Sure.
That's why there's thousands of references in it.
Oh, okay, right.
But in doing this, he's also putting the transvestite twist in there to get his points across.
Okay.
I mean, you would never have caught me wearing any of that stuff at the time. 30 years later, I've got a full Frankenfurter costume. I'm now a transgender woman.
Right.
Take your pick.
Right.
Is it what your people were talking about? No. It's you got to look at the time period of when it was written, and how it stays alive is because each new generation discovers it and puts their own meaning into it.
Okay.
So now it's about it's an affirmation of transgenderism. Well, back then it's just I'm Frankenfurter. I'm wearing, for lack of a better word, women's clothing.
Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
As far as the plot of the movie goes.
Plot?
Yeah,
there was a plot?
There's a very weak plot. He didn't know how to dress in the USA, so he dressed like that. Right. But he was bisexual.
Yeah.
They're from the planet, the galaxy transgender. Transylvania. Okay, my brain. I've
Oh,
had
come
too
on,
much
40
coffee.
times.
I know. Because the Transylvania is the name of the planet they came from in the galaxy of transsexual.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
Even though it doesn't make much sense that way. But
Gotcha.
as far as all these other labels people are hanging on to, it's just plain fun.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Well, you know what? Even if this doesn't, I'm gonna hang on to this just to put that out there every time someone brings up that opposing viewpoint. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And feel free to come to the Conclave Convention and see my presentation.
Okay.
It's the second weekend of October.
All right, Conclave Convention. And do you have a website or something where people can?
Their website is conclavesf.org, I believe.
Okay.
Or if you just type in Conclave, you'll pop up the right address.
Okay.
But it's in Dearborn this year.
Okay.
It's the 40th anniversary this year, so we're going to try and have a big party. Invite all your friends. Transgender are welcome.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So Rocky Horror Picture Show, one of those internal debates that I'm going to stay out of and not necessarily have a strong opinion on, though I have to admit she made a pretty good case for it.
Nice to meet you. So tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, what's your name?
My name is Angela Lepard, and I'm a deacon here at Christ the Good Shepherd.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about your church and what y'all are doing out here today.
Well, Christ the Good Shepherd is a liberal Catholic church in the Catholic tradition.
Okay.
So we have priests, we have a mass. However, we are an independent Catholic church. We're not a part of Rome.
Okay.
We are an affirming church. So our priests are gay. Myself, I identify as pansexual. Okay. We are affirming to everybody in the LGBT community. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I do a lot of outreach with the trans community. Mm-hmm. I unfortunately,
hence your presence here today.
Yes,
so that's
yes.
Good, yeah.
Specifically, I know what it's like to be asked to leave a church, and I know what it's like to have that almost like spiritual abuse.
Okay.
And so part of my ministry is introducing people to an idea of a loving God and a God that accepts them as their authentic self.
Gotcha. So you throw out, unlike the opponents of said things, you throw out the entire Old Testament, not just cherry pick of the few things you want to hang on to.
Well, I mean,
New Covenant, no. I hear that a lot when I...
Well, we're not literalists. We're not fundamentalists.
Yes, of course.
Yes, we are very Catholic, and our congregation is LGBT, straight, cis, trans.
Right.
So we accept everybody.
Okay.
But we are really a home for people that are looking for a more accepting place.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Sure, nice to meet you.
It should come as no surprise to anyone who is listening to my program regularly, but I am not a churchgoer. I am not a religious man. But I have to admit, having been raised Catholic and having essentially rejected that doctrine and dogma at some point in my life, if I were looking for a church, I would find myself drawn to something like this that existed essentially in the same tradition, but as a rejection of the more organized and more hierarchical organization. It was interesting. Again, I'm not looking for a church, but if I were, I'd be knocking on her door for sure.
Nice guy, Eddie from Rainbow Radio. Nice to meet you.
I'm Sonda Thomas. Nice to meet you as well.
Okay, and your organization is?
We are Health Emergency Lifeline Programs. The acronym is HELP.
Okay.
Because it's what we do. We offer education, prevention measures, as well as attempting to raise the awareness of HIV, as well as hepatitis C. That is the major populations that we service in our organization. Okay. However, we are also insurance navigators, so we help persons enroll in the Affordable Care Act, as well as the state coverage, such as Michigan Bridges or Healthy Michigan Plan.
Okay.
Those services are open to everyone in the community, regardless of status. And we also offer mental health services, which are open to the community at large. Of course, it's based on the insurance that they have.
Okay.
And we're attempting to expand more services within our organization so we can just serve the community as a whole.
Okay.
That way.
And do you have a website?
We do have a website. It is www.helpoffice.org. We are open Monday through Friday. We have extended hours on Tuesday and Thursday where we stay open to 6:30.
Okay, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it. Nice guy, Eddie, Rainbow Radio. Nice to meet you. And you are?
I'm Louis Francesco Mazzuo.
Okay.
I'm a transgender Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a board member for Call to Action, which is the largest progressive Catholic organization that are trying to change the Roman Catholic Church to be more inclusive, to be more loving to people.
Okay.
And I'm also became a board member for Mission Coalition for Human Rights. Upcoming this September, I'll be a board member. I just had an orientation for it.
Okay, great.
And so I work for both of the organizations.
They're taking the tent we're standing next to, so. All right, so, and you guys have a website?
Yes, we do. We have a website, cta-usa.org.
Okay, great.
And the other one have mchr.org.
Okay, for the Michigan Human Rights. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Very, very nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Okay, time for the first really amusing anecdote of the day. The person I was just speaking with, if you couldn't tell from the accent, was of Japanese descent. Actually, believed immigrated from Japan. And they were very devout Catholic, and not independent Catholic like the first lady that I spoke with, but actually Catholic and trying to effect change within the church, as they mentioned. This person also said that they wanted to be a Franciscan monk, but were not allowed to within the church because they were transgender. So again, I applaud anybody who's really trying to make change. I am not optimistic that things are going to change within the Catholic Church, but I do applaud people who both work within and who, like the first case, go ahead and go the independent route. Now, as we were talking, and they mentioned that they did not want to leave the church and they wanted, in fact, to become more involved, I asked what they thought of the new Pope. And they sort of gave me this sort of smirky, frowny, I don't think so kind of face. And I was surprised by that. I know that the Pope has said some rather interesting things, to put it charitably, about transgender people. But I thought that the way that he has taken the focus off of abortion and off of gay issues, LGBT issues, and really focused more on social justice and helping the poor, etc. I've been optimistic. I don't hero worship. I know he's not perfect, and I don't expect him to be. I expect him to be better, and I think he is better. So I was surprised by their reaction. So we talked a little bit more, and they mentioned, yes, the Pope has some issues with transgender people, and trying to lighten the mood a bit, as I do. I went to my old standby, my old joke about, because the Pope actually compared transgender people to nuclear weapons. Yes, this makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, but it's such an absurd comparison. It's such to say that transgender people are like nuclear weapons and that they're, I don't know. It was such an absurd thing that I like to go back to it. And I think if you're going to be misrepresented, if somebody's going to say something not very nice about you, I don't know. I mean, I went to it. I said, well, come on. You're nuclear weapons. That's badass, isn't it? I mean, come on. And I could tell I was getting nowhere. And then they said the thing that made me want to kill myself right on the spot. Well, I am from Nagasaki. I am a horrible person. Nothing like telling a nuclear weapon joke to a person who is from one of the only two cities my country, any country, but my country happened to have detonated one on. Yeah, real smooth, Eddie. There's paying attention there. Anyway, I did apologize profusely, and I think they actually found my embarrassment and apology a lot more humorous than they found my joke. But anyway, moving on.
Hi, nice guy Eddie, Rainbow Radio.
Hi, I'm Ashton.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So, what do you guys? What wares are you peddling here?
We are FTM Detroit. We are a social and support group for female to male or transmasculine people in the Metro Detroit area. We have a support group that meets the second Wednesday of the month and fourth Monday of the month at Affirmations.
Okay.
You can find
Affirmations is getting a lot of. I've got to highlight them sometime.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're on all social media if you just search FTM Detroit.
Okay.
And we've got all of these great shirts, which you can also buy on Etsy. So we've got our fabulous Ferndale shirts that are giving the town of Ferndale a wonderful shout out.
Yep.
We've got both of our FTM Detroit logos. We've got a Home is Where Your Homos Are shirt. with the Detroit skyline, and we've got our Gender Blender shirt. It's a party that we have probably every 3 months.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And you guys got a website or?
Yeah.
You did say social media, but
we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
Okay.
We have no website yet, but we're working
FTM
on it.
Detroit.
FTM Detroit.
All right. Well, nice talking to you. Thank you.
Nice talking to you too.
Hi, Nice Guy Eddie from Rainbow Radio.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, so why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your organization here?
Well, a little bit. My name is Rosemary Joswick, and I am a holistic psychotherapist. And part of what we do is we utilize and implement traditional as well as non-traditional therapeutic modalities that assist people really to get from one place to the next place. Really in their life. So really, our philosophy is a little different sometimes than other clinicians because we do use really non-traditional methods as well. Meaning energy alignments. The other thing that we try to do is we focus a lot on not only on the things that may be the struggles or challenges that people are having, but also the parts of your life that are going very well. Because remember, if you only focus on the parts that aren't going well, then the next thing you know, what you begin to believe is, oh my gosh, my life is nothing going well. So really, everything is about balance. So whether that's energy balance within your body, whether that's balance of being able to move forward, whether that's balance of being able to look at some of the challenges. So really what we look at is try to assist people to raise their vibration using all kinds of different types of modalities, which then negative emotions and negative feelings kind of go by the wayside if you put your attention towards really more positive and higher vibrations. So if you're feeling excited about the changes that you're making step by step by step, even if you're severely depressed and what you can feel good about is the fact that really I took a shower today, then you're in a higher vibration than you would have been, and the focus is on not on all the things that I didn't do, but here's the thing that I did do. Already feeling better about yourself and raising vibration and moving forward in a more positive stream of being. So we kind of we do use some very traditional things, but most of the time what I believe and have learned over the years is that, especially now, it's a rare thing that somebody doesn't know where their struggle comes from. Whether you're looking it up on the internet or you're reading every self-help book that there is.
WebMD.
Exactly. So
my elbow hurts. You have cancer.
Exactly. So what we try to do is use an approach that isn't about always looking and regurgitating, all of the broken parts or the wounded parts, but being able to say we acknowledge them. We use a two-prong approach, and what we try to do is move really people's lives forward. And the difference is also by being able to do that, you're the person in charge. I may be the resource person. I may be the person who is, says and does kind of connect the dots, but I'm not telling you what to do really with your life. So I think that how that has benefited really the folks that I have worked with in terms of working with the transgender and gender fluent and gender nonconformist community is that we just really believe that we are not the gatekeepers of your life. And rarely do I see people who truly are mentally ill where that's a component of that. Because usually it's not a component.
The mental illness is a symptom. It's not what it is not the illness is not a delusion of. It's everything else that's symptomatic of the gender issue. And
a lot of times it's trying to maneuver your way through a society that says you only have two options. And that doesn't fit for me. So now what? And I'm trying to maneuver through that. So we've been doing this for a little bit. And as much as we have some people who look for traditional, but very, very few. I do think that the movement and where we are headed is not so much of being able to, diagnose and psychoanalyze people, but it's much more about just assisting people and in the direction and kind of coaching them, of here's supported people, here's a place to look, you can go over here, access this, try a little of this. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you don't have to eat everything that's on your plate. You can say, I didn't care for that next, or that doesn't work for me next. And I think the other thing that sets us apart is that we create individualized working plans with folks. We don't subscribe to just one particular type of modality. So, it is kind of that we work with you to be able to find what's the best method and approach for you.
Okay, well, that's
Oh,
appreciate
definitely.
your time.
Oh,
thank you very much.
so very much. Thank you for being here also.
Thank you.
I think I mentioned before that I have about as much use for holistic medicine as I have for religion, but I have to admit that she was a very nice lady, and a lot of what she was saying made a lot of sense. Well, apparently, just like many of the churches there, maybe a little bit different and maybe worth checking out.
Nice Guy Eddie, Rainbow Radio, and you are?
I'm Reverend Roland Stringfellow, the pastor of MCC Detroit. We're located here in Ferndale, where we have a particular outreach to the LGBT community, and we've been established since 1971 as one of the premier spiritual communities that caters to the LGBT community.
Right.
Although we welcome all individuals, particularly those who have been excluded from other spiritual communities, for if they've been divorced or incarcerated, addicted to substances, whatever.
Right.
We like to say, all are welcomed, and this is Christ's message to the community, and that is what we're living out.
Right, and you mentioned something about Christ siding on the side of the downtrodden earlier. Where on earth did you get that crazy idea?
Indeed.
Come on, Christ sides with the elite. We all know that.
When you look at the message of Jesus Christ and what Christ did, Christ clearly sided with those who were kind of on the margins of society.
Right.
And to say that, because society put you there, you're not there in God's eyes.
Okay.
And we uplift
that's a good message. That's a good message.
Indeed.
Hey, you on the web?
We are on the web.
Okay.
mccdetroit.org.
Okay.
And we have a comedy show coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up in September 12th at 9 p.m., 8 p.m. at Laugh Tracks, which is in Novi. And have LGBT comedians there, and the proceeds go to benefit our church.
Okay, well, great. And that was September 12th again, you said, right?
September 12th at Laugh Tracks in
Laugh
Novi.
Tracks. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Indeed.
A couple things about my conversation with the good Reverend there. First of all, Jesus siding with the outcasts and outskirts of society? Nah, come on. Where did he get that idea? I still say Jesus is a 1%er. We all know Republican Jesus, don't we? I know. The other point there I want to make, and this is going to become important for my amusing anecdote for the next. Actually, I realize most of these have not been that amusing, but this one's actually kind of funny. As a prelude to the next conversation, I want to say that we had to do that bit twice because I use my cell phone when I record. I use the video camera and I pull the audio off of it. And when I was done with the bit just now, I looked down to hit stop and I realized I'm hitting record. I hadn't been recording the entire time, so I was like, I'm sorry, dude, can we do that again? He's like, yeah, no problem. So, it was a quick bit. We did it again. But let's just say from that point forward, and this is important because I'm going to come back to this. Every now and then, as I'm interviewing people, I got into the habit of glancing down at my phone and make sure that I'm still recording. Makes sense, and just with that in mind, I'm going to play the last clip of the day.
Hey, Rainbow Radio, and you are?
I'm Jazz.
Jazz?
Yep.
And so, all right, I stand with Planned Parenthood and Trans Health. So, bridge the gap for me here. What's the connection?
Well, Lauren.
Don't get me wrong, I'm behind both, but I'm just wondering
Actually, Lauren's probably more prepared to talk to you about that.
Oh, okay.
Jazz, will you? Yeah, I can do your pitch part. Okay, wait. I found one. Just kidding.
Hi, Nice Guy Eddie, Rainbow Radio. Nice to meet you.
Lauren, nice to meet you.
Okay, so you, I see stand with Planned Parenthood and Trans Health. So bridge the gap for me here. What's the connection?
So Planned Parenthood is a welcoming, inclusive reproductive health care provider for all folks.
Okay.
Our health care services are open to anyone regardless of age, race, gender, sexual orientation, national origin, income, insurance status, ability.
So you guys actually does a lot of good, contrary to what people say. I'm joking. I'm totally.
Okay. We do quite a bit of good in the community.
Imagine that.
Pap smears, STD, STI tests, and you'll see right here on our patient intake form. It's just sample patient intake form. We have space for preferred name and gender, as well as legal name and gender.
Okay, so they're prepared to.
We are prepared here in
okay,
Michigan to make sure that folks are being addressed in the ways that they really would like.
Right.
When asking about your sexual history, some places just ask you for an orientation. We're actually asking about who you're sleeping with.
Right.
What sorts of acts you are
performing.
As
that pertains to your medical needs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, nothing is invasive. We make sure that folks are addressed at the level that they're at and where they really, really need that health care. So that's why we're here. We're part of the community in a lot of different ways, and Planned Parenthood stands with the trans community, and we're excited to see where trans rights go in Michigan.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks.
Before I close out, I do want to say that I unequivocally stand with Planned Parenthood. I believe them to be a fantastic organization, and while Margaret Sanger, their founder, was certainly not perfect, based on the world that existed before she came along, the world that existed afterwards, I do count her among my personal heroes, for what that's worth for someone who doesn't hero worship. I want to thank Lauren for taking the time to talk to me, particularly at the end there. And then I wanted to also, she and I had a little conversation via email afterwards because of the way that worked out. So remember I said that the gentleman I was interviewing prior, the Reverend, every now and then, as I'm interviewing Lauren, I kept glancing down at my phone. Now, if you think about where a reporter holds a microphone, and she was actually a little. She was not trans, but she was very tall, and she was taller than me. And so I'm kind of holding my phone up a little bit, and kind of in her face where a microphone would be. And every now and then I'm glancing down. And what it must have looked like, in my mind, was that I'm a jackass who is having a serious conversation with a woman about a very serious organization doing good work for a very serious issue, and I'm staring down at her chest every 15 seconds. She was very understanding and said, No, I assumed you were checking your phone. I'm like, thank God. But the other thing, though, as I was thinking about this, remember that I said this was on my cell phone, and I didn't think until later, much later that day, where was my camera pointed the entire time? So I went back, and remember I said that I just take the audio clips from videos. I watched the video. Yeah, tits. 2.5 minutes solid of wall-to-wall, in-your-face tits. I'm having a serious discussion with a woman from an organization doing very good work on a serious issue. And what is my camera filming the entire time she's talking? Tits. Like I said, I'm smooth. Anyway, I'm very glad to have had the opportunity to go out there and meet all those great people, talk to the organizations. Definitely going to come back and towards the end of the show and signal boost everybody again. But had a great time. Met a lot of interesting people. Had a lot of great conversations. Not all of which made it not all of which were recorded, and not all of which made it onto the show. I met some people with some really interesting and in some cases really heartrending personal stories that had said, "Hey, can I come on sometime and tell?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So anyway, had a great time, and look forward to covering events like this in the future. Normally, I think this will be the last time that we do one of these on a Sunday. The events like these and personal notes of mine, that sort of thing, will typically now be the venue of the Tuesday night show. And that's about all I have to say, really. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. Also going back to the technical difficulties that I'm having. I'm recording this on a computer that is prone to having the software crash on me. So I'm kind of crossing my fingers that I can even get through this. Now, as I was existing on the internet last couple of days, there was a sort of faux controversy or a non-troversy that came across my it hit me on my Facebook feed, also some other venue. I can't remember where else I was seeing it, and also some of the guests that future guests that I'm sort of checking in on from time to time, make sure they haven't forgotten about me, make sure we can still get something scheduled and they're still interested. And this is the idea that this is going to sound completely idiotic. But after checking around, this apparently is a thing. And I was dumbfounded by this. This falls under the category, I've said it before when I've spoken about black issues, that yes, I'm a white person, but even I'm getting tired of white people's shit sometimes. Well, I'm a cisgender person, but I have to say I'm a little bit embarrassed for cisgender people when it came to this particular non-issue. And this is the idea. This is the idea that the word cisgender is somehow a slur that transgender people use to refer to the rest of us. I've seen it described as their word for us. I saw somebody write a poem about not being gay, not being trans, not being the other, but I am not cisgender, it was called. I am not cisgender, I am a man. Okay, and if you were assigned male at birth, you're cisgender. That's what words mean. What's wrong with you? And it occurred. I mean, it's so idiotic, and I don't know where, like, quite which flavor of stupidity I'm dealing with here. So I have to kind of work this out a bit. I'm wondering, does this come from not wanting to even recognize transgenderism as an actual legitimate thing? Part of the human condition? Is that where this is coming from? That they're so bothered by that idea that they can't accept that there's a word for people who aren't experiencing that? Is it just are they just being judgmental assholes and they're like, the word for us is normal? You know those types. Again, to me normal is a mathematic, because I'm a scientist and engineer and a amateur mathematician. Normal is a mathematical distribution which includes wide variability. Deviations as a standard feature. You might have heard of the standard deviation, and also, of course, includes many, many, many outliers. Well, few outliers, but again, an infinite number if you have an infinite population. So to me, two things lining up on exactly two columns would not be normal. In fact, if you had a measurable trait in nature, or for that matter in any man-made system, either way, and you were measuring it, and it fit precisely, it was either this or it was that, and there was no deviation at all, that would be profoundly abnormal. In fact, it would be so abnormal as to actually be physically impossible. Go out and measure anything and try to get it to fit everybody be the same, or everybody fit into two neat categories. It doesn't work. You need a range. There's always deviation in all attributes. Anything that can be quantified. You will never be quantified exactly the same throughout a population. That would be so unusual. That would not be normal at all. So, enough babbling about normal, which, I mean, let's face it, like I say, is people say there's no such thing as normal. Well, there's such a thing as it, but it's a completely meaningless term for what the haters are trying to use it for. Let's get back to cisgender. Couple of points here for anybody who thinks I'm wrong, and I can't imagine most people that are listening are really that hung up on this, but I'm doing this for posterity. I'm doing this because I have to put this out there. First of all, I have never in my life heard a transgender person use the word cisgender in a negative way. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's the whole like cisgender privilege thing, and but again, that's not a slur. We hear about white privilege, and I've never heard white used as a slur. I mean, yeah, I've heard some people scoff and say, white people, just as I've heard my wife scoff and say, men, And I've seen many a man roll his eyes and say, women, am I right? But that doesn't mean any of these things are slurs, just because we can occasionally roll our eyes or scoff at them. There's still labels for categories, and most of them are accepted. The other side of that is I can't help but think, is heterosexual a slur? Because that's a fancy word that means normal in a lot of these people's minds, these very closed, bigoted minds. But again, it's a fancy sounding word, and it's not. I've never heard it described as the gays' word for us. No, nor have I ever heard it used as a slur. It simply means that the sexes in my relationship are different, hetero, versus the same, homo. Okay? I mean, in fact, and by the way, I've never heard hetero used as a slur, but I've heard homo used as sort of a very light slur. So if anything, I would think that's the term. I mean, the derogatory term for transgender people that I will not mention here, of course, derives from transgender. So again, that word is much closer to a slur. Of course, neither is really. They're clinical terms meant to describe an observable part of the human condition. The idea, though, that you're going to have a name for one thing and that somehow the name for everything that doesn't belong to that, especially when it's describing the majority of the population, is somehow negative, is, of course, completely idiotic. But then again, so is bigotry, so is hanging on to those outmoded models that don't work. So is conservatism, actually. That statement might bother some people, but if you'd like to discuss it further, by all means, you can send me an email at niceguy9418@usa.com. You can friend me or unfriend me on Facebook at Eddie Cabot, or you can leave a comment on my blog at eddiecabot.blogspot.com. Before we check out, I wanted to give a final shout out to the organizations that participated in the event. The event was put on by Transgender Michigan. I spoke to representatives from Equality Michigan, the Gender Identity Network Alliance, the Stonewall Bar Association, Health Emergency Lifeline Programs, Call to Action, Michigan Equality and Human Rights, the Community of Christ, the Good Shepherd, FTM Detroit, Metropolitan Community Church of Detroit, and of course Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood of Michigan. So again, thank everyone for taking the time to speak with me, and thank everybody for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evening listening to Rainbow Radio.